as New Zealand looks to protect and advance our interests in the Indo-Pacific, we can only do so alongside partners like India that have a significant role to play in the Indo-Pacific region. In an increasingly multipolar world, India's size and geostrategic heft gives you autonomy. And at the same time, your democratic partners in the Indo-Pacific offer you a force multiplier for our convergent interests. For at a time when democracy is in decline with less than half the world's adults electing their leaders, it truly is an inspiration that 650 million Indians turned out to vote last year in the largest election in history. Your national election is a triumph of logistics, but it's also a triumph of legitimacy. An election that means your leaders serve their people rather than your people serving their leaders. Now, I don't advocate arbitrary divisions between democracies and autocracies, and just because we are democracies, we won't always see eye to eye. Nonetheless, there's truth in the fact that our democratic governance means that we share a belief in the freedom to choose, giving everyone a voice and respect for the rules. Our interests increasingly converge around seeing three ideas as an aligned set of organising principles for our Indo-Pacific region. And the first is that we want to live in an Indo-Pacific where countries are free to choose their own path, free from interference. A region where no one country comes to dominate. And it is a sign of the times that I have to stand here defending respect for sovereignty, yet New Zealand's approach is increasingly shaped around that objective. Just on Saturday, I joined a call led by Prime Minister Starmer focused on what more those contributing to Ukraine's defence can do to support a just and lasting peace, to help a country whose sovereignty and territorial integrity has been so flagrantly attacked. And in my own home region, our fellow Pacific neighbours are navigating geostrategic dynamics that are their sharpest in nearly 80 years. And in a deeply contested world, Pacific partners are being asked to make choices that may undermine their national sovereignty. They risk falling into over-indebtedness. They must make choices about dual-use infrastructure, and they face pressure to enter new security arrangements. New Zealand invests in working alongside Pacific countries to boost their capacity to make independent choices free from interference. Yet size alone cannot inoculate a country from these dynamics. Building strong and diversified relationships is the key to mitigating the risk of dependence on a few. And that is why my government is investing in our key relationships, from traditional partners to thickening and deepening our relationships across Southeast Asia, and in a serious way with India too. And we have a responsibility to invest in our own security as a down payment on our future ability to choose our own path. And that is why New Zealand will be scaling up and doing more to support our own defence. We plan to better resource and equip our defence force to ensure that we can continue to defend our interests, whether in our near region, in our alliance with Australia, or in support of collective security efforts with partners like India. Alongside this investment in capability, we're making tangible contributions across the Indo-Pacific. When I was in Japan last year, for example, I saw firsthand the work of our aviators and what they do to detect and deter North Korea's sanctions-busting activities. The New Zealand Navy is leading Combined Task Force 150, responsible for multinational activities to protect trade routes and counter smuggling, piracy and terrorism in the Indian Ocean and Gulf of Aden. We are fortunate indeed that India has agreed to take up the deputy command. And underlining these naval connections, one of our frigates, Takaha, is in Mumbai later this week. But as we seek an Indo-Pacific in which countries are free to choose their own path, I'm determined that New Zealand plays its role, whether through our work with Pacific Island partners, our relationship in the Indo-Pacific, or through our own defence efforts. Now, the second principle both India and New Zealand subscribe to is the criticality of Indo-Pacific regional institutions, even as these evolve. Regional architecture scaffolds our region's security and its prosperity. ASEAN continues to promote regional peace and economic development through its convening power and its centrality. It also provides a place for the region's players to come together to discuss strategic issues. ASEAN sits at the centre of the East Asia Summit, which for 20 years now has enabled political dialogue across the region, a forum that builds understanding, like this one, that reduces the risk of miscalculation and contributes to strategic trust. Yet the Indo-Pacific architecture is not static as it adapts to new realities, and many-lateral groupings are important new pieces of the puzzle. The Quad has emerged as an important vehicle promoting an open, stable and prosperous Indo-Pacific region. And India's contribution to that evolution, of course, has been vital. And while New Zealand has no pretensions to Quad membership, we stand ready to work with you to advance Quad initiatives. We ourselves are strengthening our work with Japan and the Republic of Korea, as well as Australia. And last year I convened the Indo-Pacific Four to discuss Ukraine and North Korea. And with serious headwinds buffeting the global trade system, New Zealand has seriously invested in Indo-Pacific trade and economic integration groupings. From the CPTPP, the gold standard of FTAs internationally, through to the RCEP, perhaps the world's most inclusive agreement. And we welcome India's engagement in the regional economic architecture with our work together in the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, important in an area in which we seek to build one another's resilience. And the third Indo-Pacific principle that we align around is a region in which respect for the rules is foundational. Globally, rules are being undermined, whether those around territorial integrity, freedom of navigation, or laws of war. Yet these are the very rules that preserve an Indo-Pacific order that is not might is right alone. And as I've said before, there is no prosperity without security. The rules that underpin our security also allow our businesses to operate with great certainty, and those rules deliver daily in meaningful ways for our people and our populations. For example, 1 in 4 jobs in New Zealand rely on exports, and our exporting businesses being able to depend on the predictability that those rules deliver. And in a miracle that's only possible thanks to globally accepted aviation standards, 120,000 flights carry 12 million passengers and operate safely between their destinations each and every day. These rules shape the character of our region, and we must remain committed to this rules-based system even while acknowledging its very shortcomings. And it is a truism that the world of 2025 is vastly different from 1945, and our global institutions sadly have been way too slow to adapt. So we're not talking about starting over by remaking the global order. Instead, I tend to agree with Dr. Jaishankar when he says that we want an order in which change is evolutionary at a pace that is comfortable and steady. And that's why New Zealand supports reforming global governance frameworks to better reflect today's realities. Rather than casting them aside, they should give greater voice to the developing world and underrepresented regions. Countries like India, that plays such a central role in the global community, should have a seat at the table, and we've therefore long advocated and supported India having a permanent seat on a reformed UN Security Council. Distinguished